Hey everybody, welcome back to Feedback Loop, a special episode of Feedback Loop. I'm Joey.
I'm Jeremy, a special episode variant of Jeremy.
Yeah, it
Nah,
is a
I'm just kidding.
special episode.
I'm the same Jeremy.
Yeah,
I'm
I've
not
never
like
been
duplicate.
special, so
Oh my God,
it's
Joe, you're special to me. You are
Oh my
50% of this podcast.
Does that make me special?
I mean, it's
Yeah,
more
it
than
does.
not being, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's more
We
than
all
everybody else.
we need to look down our nose at all these nerds that are not part of this podcast
Hell
as being
yeah.
inferior to us.
Why is this episode special, Jeremy?
This episode is special because it's our recap, our fave fives of 2022. And I actually meant to ask you this earlier, but I think I already know the answer. Because there have been distinctions in the past of our criteria for picking albums.
Yeah.
These are all albums, at least on my list, they're all albums that released in the year 2022. I assume that is true for yours? Okay.
I switched over last year, and I think I'm switching for good because I don't know. I can't.
It feels less meaningful, I think, than the way you did it, which is just the 5 albums that you liked the best and discovered that year, because that's kind of what our podcast is about. That's what we like to do. But I don't know. There's something fun about just like living yourself, right? You're creating a rule set. You're creating boundaries for what is acceptable.
I agree. For me, it makes it easier than it was trying to okay, what are all of the albums that I discovered this year?
That's true. It's a more narrow slice, and it's more relevant to you, the listener, who maybe doesn't like doing deep discography dives on random unknown artists. All of mine are fairly well known. I guess that's not true. I guess I can't speak for some of them. To me, they're well known, but to you, they might be completely unknown albums. Before we get into our top fives, we're gonna do some honorable mentions quickly, just because there are just so many good albums that came out this year, and not all of them could make the top 5. I'm not happy that all of them could not make the top 5. I spent too much time, and I'm still regretting every decision I make. But the honorable mentions I picked up. We'll just do them in order I have them written down here. Not in any particular order, as far as the impact or whatever. Soccer Mommy, Sometimes Forever. Very close to making my list. I really enjoyed it. It was, I think, it's the top discovery for me this year, perhaps, as far as an artist I had never heard of releasing an album that I really, really love a lot. Jack White's Fear of the Dawn came out early this year, came out strong. It's a very fun album. It's very boundary shifting and pushing, but it just didn't quite make the cut for me. I think it kind of fell off. Charlie XCX's album Crash, very good album. I really enjoyed that album way more than I ever thought I would. Highly Suspect's Midnight Moon Club sounds like a return to form. I think I mentioned them fairly recently on the podcast, but their new album kind of is hitting back to their older sound, and I really enjoy that. And then one of them is kind of maybe considered a plug as well, but the streamer I follow, Kyle Bossman, did a community album earlier this year called Everybody Wins, where he just wrote some goofy songs based on a video game's multiple endings and then submitted it to his audience, and his audience remixed them and produced them essentially for him. So I feel like that was a highlight of my year, even though the album is not of the same quality or caliber necessarily as the ones in my top 5. But that album's called Everybody Wins. I think you can find it on SoundCloud. I don't know. I'll put a link to it in the description just for ease of access. I'm not going to mention something so weird and then not give you that information.
So that was your 5, huh? Well,
those were my honorable mentions. Yeah. My 5 honorable mentions that just couldn't quite make the list for me.
Well, I have 3. I did originally have 5, and then I was just like, I need to
throw them all in there, man.
Yeah. Man, okay. But the one that I did cut off that I'm adding literally right now was an album by Domi and JD Beck, who are
Never heard of them.
They're all over YouTube, at least. I feel like their stuff got plugged so hard this year, and for good reason. So JD Beck is an amazing drummer and super young, and it's just like very. It's definitely like the new style of, I guess it could be considered jazz, where it's like the fast like that type of stuff, but it's all like really intricate. And
Sure.
then Domi is a keyboard player who they like work just so well together. The album's called Not Tight, and it had a bunch of like big name features. It had Thundercat, most notably, at least for me, because Thundercat's a fucking amazing
Who
bassist.
doesn't like Thundercat?
Yeah, exactly. And it had Snoop Dogg. It, of course, Snoop Dogg's on
He's
everything.
everywhere. He's
and
in my life, apparently.
and then it also had Busta Rhymes, Anderson .Paak. It had Mac DeMarco, like just a ton of big
Man.
names on there.
Yeah.
But it was a really good album. It didn't quite make the cut simply because it didn't immediately have as big as big of an impact on me as a lot of the other albums did. But so now I have 4 honorable mentions, and that was one of them. Another one is probably a band people have heard of called Built to Spill. They came out with an album this year called When the Wind Forgets Your Name. And I love 90s Built to Spill. And the reason this was an honorable mention is mainly because it's not necessarily a return to form, but it's the first album that I've heard from them in a long time that actually like resonated with me, I guess.
Yeah. I love it when
So
that happens.
yeah, it was just a nice feeling to hear it. And even judging by the album art, like they had very like simplistic album art in the back, like back in the 90s, and this album art was like nuts, so I listened to it not expecting to like it, and then I liked it, so it was just
Yeah.
even better.
That's a fun find.
Yeah. Next one is a band that I actually played for everybody while we were playing a game the other day called the band is Infected Mushroom. They came out with they've been around for 25 years at this point, so it's called I Am 25, and it's just an overall great album with some misses on it, which is why it's not on the top 5. But it had Mr. Bill as a feature on the last song,
That's fun.
and yeah, so it was a good one. That one's kind of like a mix of like metal and techno. They're very like a dance trance type sound. And then my last honorable mention is Joji's 2022 album Smithereens. I just couldn't in good conscience put it in my top 5. It's a very short album and there are misses on it. So like
Damn.
as much as Die For You is like that's like one of my new favorite Joji songs, and I really like Glimpse of Us, which was like the big single, but there's just some other songs on there that I could like really give or take. Like I don't care too much about them, so it didn't hit me in the way that I can't remember. I don't know why I can't remember his Nectar. It didn't hit me in the way Nectar did, so it didn't get on the list.
Doesn't make the cut. You had sounds like you had stringent criteria for what made it and what did not make it in your top 5, and it's just making me regret my decisions so much more, because an album like Sometimes Forever by Soccer Mommy, for me, I don't think has a miss. I think that album's hits all the way through. However, my number 5 pick, getting right into it, I feel like has a miss on it. But I also listened to it a lot more. I found it more easy to return to and then just put on and listen to it. And my number 5 pick is Palaces by Flume, which is I like Flume. I'm a big fan of Flume in general. This album, I think, immediately came on really strong, and then kind of fizzled, and then kind of came back for me. So it's been something that's been not necessarily a constant for me this year. I mean, it came out relatively late in the year, I suppose, compared to some of the other ones. But I don't know. It just does things. It's great driving music. It's good Flume. It does have a miss or two on it for me that I'm just not super into, that kind of break up the album. But overall, it's there's a lot of like really like interesting songs on it. It's very like an enchanting album for me. It's got a lot of big features on it, including your boy Damon Albarn for track number 13, the title track, which is kind of like it sends off the album in a great way. And it's just I don't know. It's just a fun album to listen to. It's something that kind of just keeps popping back into my mind.
Well, hell yeah. Well, I guess maybe I'm not holding mine to as high of a criteria as I held my honorable mentions to for some reason, because my number 5 is Beach Bunny's Emotional Creature. And this
Interesting.
one, I like it almost didn't make the cut, but I also didn't know what else I was going to put there. And I like the album a lot, especially as I've listened to it more. It has definitely grown on me. And with Blame Game, which I guess that's an EP, but that was like their last release.
Release, yeah.
It it didn't immediately hit me in the way that like I know I wasn't like super sold on Honeymoon whenever it first came out, but Honeymoon has like quickly become like I could listen to that album all
It's
day
the
along
epitome
with
of Beach Bunny music.
like it's just it hit for me. And Emotional Creature didn't quite have that immediate connection, but the more I listened to it, and I don't know if I'm biased because we went and saw them live, so we got to see some of their newer songs come
Yeah,
out, but I don't know, it's just every time I listen to it I find something else that I like more about it. And the fact that it's coming back off of Blame Game, which I do like Blame Game, the more I listen to it as well, it still doesn't hit the same spot, and
right.
Emotional Creature hits that spot for me.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you put it as your number 5 simply because you weren't sure what else would go there, and I
Yeah,
feel like that's the same for me. Like the number 5 slot was just something that's like, okay, it's something that's worth mentioning, but there's 4 albums that came out that are better than it this
yeah,
year. So it's kind of
yeah,
like, what do I put in that slot? What do I need to like round out my list? And for me, Flume Palaces, I almost cut Flume Palaces. This is one of those albums where it's like, is it worthy of the top 5? But I'm like, what else am I gonna put there?
yeah,
So Flume Palaces did make it. Is there? Moving on to my number 4. This one is interesting for me because this was not being monitored by me necessarily. Usually, when I go through a year, I make note of albums that come out that I really enjoy, so that I can revisit them at the end of the year when we do these. This album was not on my list, despite coming out pretty early in the year, and this is Buried Alive's "Our Own Light,"
oh
their
shit.
2022 album. I guess they're all 2022 albums. I don't know why they stipulated that, but it was not on my radar for this list until YouTube Music Recap came out, and Buried Alive was my second most listened to artist
Oh my
this
god.
year. And I was like, holy shit, like that album came out. I listened the shit out of that album this entire year. And like even I've been listening to it constantly. There's not been a month that goes by that I haven't listened to Buried Alive. But that album just was like it's so like maybe that's its power is that it doesn't feel like a grandiose album for me because it's just kind of always been there this
Yeah,
year. It's just kind of been in rotation constantly. It doesn't feel like it's getting a big huzzah. But I really, really do like that album a whole lot more so than I think I consciously was aware of. So that was kind of an interesting pick for me. Buried Alive, I just really love them, and they keep putting out great music.
yeah, that's it must just be one of those albums that you hear it and it's like instantly in your repertoire.
Yeah,
Like it instantly becomes one of those albums that you come back to, so you feel like it's just kind of always been there.
right. Yeah, it's wild to like it was so like far off of my radar throughout the year, despite being literally right in front of my face the whole time. And then the recap thing came out, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I was not expecting that to be on my top 5. Nonetheless, the number 2 slot. So that's fun. What's your number 4 pick?
My number 4 is the self-titled album by Wet Leg, which is
Ooh,
maybe a shocker, but man, so you mentioned them on the podcast at one
I
point, I
did.
think, or maybe it was to me. I don't know, but
I think it was on the podcast.
a little bit before that, Alyssa had actually showed me the video for Shay's Lounge and Your
Yep.
Mom, and immediately whenever I heard it, I was just like, I'm really gonna like this band,
Yeah,
and
it clicks.
it does. It instantly clicks, and that's something that I really look for whenever it's like the top albums of the year. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like, I guess, objectively of super high quality,
Right.
which not saying that Wet Legs album isn't, because it definitely is. It has a
For sure.
very like they have a very like simple but
It's very
also
tight.
yeah, it's like super cohesive and it's a very unique sound. A lot. I don't want to discount. I didn't look up both of their names. It's two, uh, two women
Two
from
ladies.
Britain, two ladies from Britain. I think I didn't do my
Yeah,
research.
they
I'm
sound
sorry.
British.
Yeah, I'm American. Kill me in the comments, whatever.
Yeah,
But
Wet Leg, if you're listening, we apologize
yeah,
for
I
not
really like your
feeling your
album.
indulgence.
It's amazing, and I like all of your other songs that weren't on the album too. So, but the lead singer, um, I'm probably gonna butcher her
Ryan
name, and I
Teasdale,
well,
Ryan
I was gonna
Teasdale,
say
and Hester Chambers.
Rian Teasdale and Hester Chambers. So Rian Teasdale is the lead singer, and she's just got like a super unique voice that she uses
Yeah,
so well throughout the album. Like all of it, like she's so expressive, but she's also deadpan at certain times, which is
yeah,
just as expressive as whenever she's like just like there's
belting it.
yeah,
There's a
just like
point where
yelling.
one of the songs, yeah, she says that she's been practicing on her like loudest, longest scream or
Yeah,
something, and she just lets it go, and she kills it. It's
it's
such a
so
fun.
good.
I agree. This album was on my radar, but it didn't. I don't know. I haven't gone back to it a whole lot. There are very catchy songs on it,
Yeah,
but it didn't quite make my list. It's a surprise pick. I was not
yeah,
anticipating Wet Leg showing up on your
it
list,
was a
so that's
shocker.
fair. It was indeed. Speaking of shocking
Oh
things,
God,
my number three pick, while not really shock rock, is kind of an interesting, unexpected. It's not unexpected if you've listened to this podcast.
yeah,
It's Necrogoblicon's new album,
of
Fundamental
course,
Slimes and Humors, which, for those who don't know, Necrogoblicon considers themselves a humor core album, where it's lighthearted, but it's still like it's got like deathcore, it's got metalcore kind of like instrumentation. It's got a lot of synth stuff though as well. The keyboard is fantastic and has made me want to learn how to play the synthesizer and piano several times this year just because of how fucking cool it is. But I don't know, that album clicked with me instantly. It's the only Necrogoblicon album that I've ever listened to, so I wasn't like going into it expecting to fall in love with it. And it's such a like meaningful, heartfelt album despite being kind of like quirky and silly at times. And it just I don't know, it stuck around throughout several of our episodes. I've mentioned them,
yeah.
and it kept coming back for me. And it was kind of a discovery. I had heard of Necrogoblicon. I had listened to a couple other singles before, but this album, it just fucking it caught me off guard, and it stuck around, and I love
Well, hell yeah. I was wondering when Necrogoblicon would pop up,
it.
so I'm glad I know.
It's there.
Um, yeah, my number three is Kendrick Lamar's 2022 album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and this one, I honestly like. If you would have asked me when it came out if this would have been on my top five, I wouldn't have had a straight answer. Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know. But because I listened to it several times and I really liked it, but there were some songs that like didn't hit me in the right way, I guess.
Right.
But what was it? He came out with a music video
Rich
semi
Spirit.
recently for Rich Spirit, yeah. And after listening to that, I just like I don't know if it made me hear the song in a new light, but I went back and I listened to the album like 10 fucking
Yeah.
times. And I was just like, "Oh my god, this is way better than I remember it being." And thinking back to Damn, which was I guess his last actual full release,
Hmm.
I feel like I've said it on record, but I'll say it again. Damn is while it is an amazing album, it's my least favorite Kendrick album.
Yeah.
And to come back from like the gap from I mean I guess he had Untitled Unmastered between To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn, but I consider To Pimp a Butterfly to be like his second to last real album
Right.
cuz
The previous
but
album.
yeah, but like cuz I love To Pimp a Butterfly. It was a fucking amazing album, and then Damn, and then this one just ramped it right back up after I started re-listening to it with kind of
Yeah.
like new ears. And it's just like
Yeah.
all the music is just amazing on it, and he works so well with it.
I think it's super interesting. I had a very similar experience with it. and that I feel like that album just it needs space. It
Yeah.
needs time to like to grow on someone in very like interesting ways because again when Rich Spirit the music video came out I was like yeah like I'm gonna listen to that. I thought it was a new single because it was just like I hadn't listened to that album in a while but I was like dude this is really good. I really like the music production on it, his flow, the words, like everything about it was just like was so like it was like a switch had flipped. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, this is really good. I don't know why I'm sleeping on this album so hard. And so I did also go back and listen to it. I didn't fully. It still hasn't fully clicked with me, but I
Hmm.
agree with what you're saying that it like the just the production on the whole album is very clean. It's very like warm and it just it feels right, despite it also having some very like cold lyrics, I suppose, in some ways, and it just it meshes very well. But it did not make my top five this year.
I
I
can't
think it needs
believe.
more time. I do
Yeah.
fully expect that by this time next year, I will have a much greater appreciation for that album. But I haven't put in the time, and it hasn't aged properly yet for me.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think it still needs to ferment a little bit. Not that it needs to get stinky, but that's a fun pick.
Hell yeah.
My number two pick is another band that is new to me, but I had heard of before. And this is an interesting pick compared to my YouTube top five, my YouTube music top fives, because it actually ranked below Buried Alive. So Buried Alive was number two on my recap. This band, Dance Gavin Dance, is number three on my recap. And then my number five is actually Necrogalcon. So they're kind of like shuffled around in my mind for them. But the Dance Gavin Dance album Jackpot Juicer came out this year, and it's fascinating to me. It is such a like clean, well produced, well written album. There's no lulls in it. It's strong from the start to the end. It covers so much ground musically and lyrically, and it does it with a style that is just so like fun and interesting, and like the vocals go places where I was not expecting them to go, and they have a lot of fun doing it, and it I think that bleeds through. There's a lot of passion there, and it's really like intoxicating to just kind of witness it happening, even if it's not like physically witnessing it with my eyes, but with my ears. Just hearing how much fun they're having making music, and it bleeds through in every aspect of that album, and I just really really love it.
Yeah. That's honestly one of the best feelings you can get from listening to an album is feeling the energy they had while making the album. And that's just,
Yeah, and it's
it,
not to say that it's all like positive, happy vibes. I mean, you guys know that we're a bunch of sad
yeah.
boys over here at Feedback Loop. So like, there's still a bunch of like very serious like lyrical content to it, but it's all like I guess it is kind of typically shown in a positive life, and there's like a positive perspective on negative situations and stuff. But it just I don't know everything just kind of comes together in such a fun package. That's just it's really just like contagious to listen to.
Man. So that was your number two, huh?
It sure
Well,
was.
get ready for my number two.
This is where it's gonna get rocky.
This is where it's
What
going to
is?
get rocky. My number two is probably not the album you're thinking of. It is Gold Panda's latest
Ooh,
release, The Work. This just came out last month, but I had to put it at number two
that's
because,
bold.
yeah, it's really bold, and I shocked myself when I did it because I think it came out in early November, which is I feel like almost too late to be put into a list
Yeah,
like this, but like I think I had mentioned it whenever I initially talked about it after I had listened to it, but his last release wasn't, it didn't scratch the Gold Panda itch for me. And this one definitely did. Like whenever I first heard it, I just kind of put it on in the background, but there were times where I would like stop what I was doing to pay attention to the music. And that's something that like I don't know if I'm
that means
playing
a
a
lot.
game. Yeah, like I would stop doing whatever activity I was doing to just be like I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing
Yeah,
right
just
now.
being in the moment while this is
Yeah.
happening in my ears.
It was amazing. And just to hear that return to form with all of the added experience he's had. Because I think before his last album, before this, the album that we did, which was Good Luck and Do Your Best, that was in 2016. So this has been 6 years since that
Right.
album. And I mean, his previous album was, I think, in 2018. And that was the one that he had a bunch of features on. And it was like an album with two other people, I think.
Right. It's more collaborative.
Yeah. And maybe, I guess that's why it didn't jive with me. But this one definitely did. And to hear that after what I feel like was a long hiatus, it just felt really good, especially because Gold Panda played such a huge role in, I guess, my music listening back whenever I first heard like Lucky Shiner and Companion, two of his albums that I would consider my favorites. This one, it's steadily reaching up there with those albums the more I listen to it, where it's just like the beats and the samples and everything that he puts into it, it all works just so well, and it catches my attention. Something new catches my attention every time I listen to it, and I'm loving it.
I love that feeling. That's a fun experience because it's something that you can kind of like keep exploring as time goes on. It's one of those albums that'll like stick with you, and like you said, if you're always finding something new every time you listen to it, there's something to like stimulate your brain, and
Hell
you
yeah.
think you're not noticing, and just the fact that it meant enough to again to pull your attention away from whatever else you were doing at the time, to make you stop and say, dude, that's a cool
Yeah.
sound,
Yeah.
or what they've done there is very interesting. Like that means so much, I think, and it's very important for albums because that proves their power, and
Yeah.
especially with like how we typically listen to music as background noise. We'll put it
Yeah.
on while we're doing something else, and I feel like that's how a lot of people listen to music nowadays because it's
Oh
so
yeah.
accessible and easy to just put on a Spotify playlist or whatever. But the fact that it can pull attention despite being something that is so like low key is just like it means something. It truly does. So
Right
that's
on.
super fascinating.
Right on, Gold Panda. Keep doing your thing.
Yeah, keep doing it. Keep making Joey stop RuneScaping. Whatever you can do, please send help. Stop
That's
Joey from
exactly
playing
what it
RuneScape.
was. I was playing RuneScape and I almost died to Vorkath because I was just like, oh my god.
It would have been a
Holy
noble
shit.
death.
It would have been. I would gladly pay 100K to hear this music.
Hell yeah. We're coming to the number ones, and I have a suspicion that we agree on this album.
I do too.
So I think we just open the floodgate here,
Okay.
and I guess I shouldn't. I should not overstep this boundary. You know what? Fuck it. Life's about taking risks. The album of the year for FeedbackLoop, which is myself and Joseph, wholly endorsed, is
Yeah.
Black Country New Roads, Ants from Up There.
Yes.
You agree?
I agree. That's what I had to.
God, it's so good. It
So
is
good.
just so good. Despite not making my top artists of YouTube music, it's just I don't know. There is something about it. There is everything about that album that is just flawless from start to end. It captures such a wide range of like sounds and emotions and everything in between that just defies logic and just like really rips your heart out at points.
Yeah.
And it's all done in a very clean package that it cannot be anywhere but number one on our list.
Yeah. Like 100%. Because I will say this album, whenever it came out, which it came out early this year, so we had
Yeah.
a pretty decent amount of time with it. But whenever it came out, it shaped how I listened to music for like a few months
Yeah.
because
You
there's
compare
so many.
everything else to it.
Yeah. And it's like I listen to it and it scratches the itch that like five other bands would scratch. Like I listen to this and then I would immediately be like my first thought, just because the vocalist Isaac Wood has an extremely unique voice that he uses just perfectly over the music, which the music somehow it sounds almost disorganized, but it's all perfectly placed on top of each other. Like
Yeah.
somehow they can simulate like chaos or perfect harmony, but it all fits perfectly on top of each other. But like his voice, it reminds me, I can't think of the guy's name, but from Joy Division, the lead singer with the very like a deeper voice. And so it
Yeah,
scratches that itch. It has like a very, and I don't mean musical as in like music, I mean musical as in like a play stage, like very, I don't know, emotive quality, which
right.
a band,
Theatrical.
yeah, like theatrical. Um, it has that type of quality, which makes me think of another band that I like called The Extraordinaires. Like it scratches that itch. It has this stage presence that I feel like from like David Bowie or something, where it's just like this very not afraid to experiment with the sounds that you have at hand. They have like horns, they have uh, plenty of string instruments, or maybe it's just one or two. I don't know how many it is, but how many ever they put
Sounds
in
like a
there,
fucking orchestra.
it sounds great. And then they just have like the regular like guitar, drums, bass, but it all works so perfectly together. And I showed it to Alyssa actually last night. I think she had maybe heard it in the background but never paid attention to it. And I
Mhm.
played it. I played from the start because we were driving home. It was about a 40-minute drive, and she didn't say anything for about 30 minutes. So the whole time, because I was driving, so I was like, I'm driving, I'm gonna put on the music. She
Right.
didn't say anything for about 30 minutes. And then she finally said, like, this sounds like a musical. And I was like, does it? I was like, I don't know how to take what you just said. I don't know if that means you
Yeah.
like it or not. And she's like, yeah, it reminds me of like a musical mixed with like David Bowie, but like very emotional, like all this stuff. And she was just like, I like it. I was just like, fuck yes. Nobody
Yeah,
can
that's a
not like
win.
this album.
It's so good. I think on top of all of those comparisons that you had made, it still manages to, I guess another facet of it is that it still manages to kind of present as an indie thing. It's a
Yeah.
very like indie rock kind of indie experimental kind of almost a bedroom feeling, but at the same time it like you're saying with the theatrical thing, it's very like it almost feels like it's a live performance
Yeah.
every time you listen to the album, which is insane because it's a studio recording, nothing's changing necessarily, but it's just so dynamic. Every track even is just like there's a push and there's a pull and there's a release and there's just like even like technically speaking dynamics. Like there's just so much going on in every inch of this album that it's there's something to keep you entertained. There's
Yeah.
never a lull in it, and when there is a lull, it's designed to make you feel a certain way. And
Yeah.
they've knocked this album out of the fucking park.
Yeah. Congrats. It's sad that immediately after the album, Isaac Wood, their lead vocalist, he had to leave due to mental health issues. It just wasn't working for him. So
Right.
he had to get out of there to get
What a
his own.
fucking note to leave on, dude.
Yeah. Like that's what I was about to say. Like if this is your siren song, like your last thing, you can, I don't know how he feels. I don't know what issues he's going through. I very sincerely hope he's getting help for him,
For
because
sure.
hearing this album, you can tell it's coming from a pained place, at least from a vocal
Yeah.
standpoint. But man, if this is your last album you ever put out, I just thank you. Thank
Yeah,
everybody
for
in the
sure.
band. It's great.
It is truly a masterpiece, and I would kill somebody to see this performed live.
Yeah. That'd be
So hey,
amazing.
if Isaac does get help, Isaac, if you're listening, hi, we love you. Have my babies. Also, if Isaac does return to the band, I would absolutely go see them live in any
I'd
way
fly
possible.
overseas.
Yeah, that would be
I'd go to
worth it. I
England or
think that would be the one, which is so like fascinating because it's hard to say that like Black Country New Road is my favorite band. Like
yeah.
they weren't in my top 5 artists of YouTube's. Hey, this is what you listened to this year because it I did listen to it a whole lot, but it wasn't something that I felt the need to circulate. I didn't want to spoil
Yeah.
what is there by oversaturating it or by listening to it. I didn't want to kill it by hearing it on the radio 100,000 times, kind of a thing. I do on the vinyl, and I've listened to it a couple times as well, just because like it's so fascinating, just like how quickly this album connects and just like it grabs on, man,
Yeah.
and it just like you want to be in the soundscape, and they do a great job of putting you there, and it's truly an accomplishment.
It really is. And also, I guess if I'm saying thank you to you, Jeremy, because I'm fairly certain you posted the video and that's what prompted me. The video for was it Concord, I think, where it had
Yeah,
the
I believe
Ant-Man
so. As
or
the
the Alien
alien
Man.
guy, yeah,
Yeah. And I was, because I had seen it on like my YouTube recommendations and I just hadn't clicked on it yet, and then he posted it and I was just like, all right, I'll check it out. And
yeah.
it was the literal best decision I've made all year.
Yeah, I think I agree. And it was also the thumbnail that drew me in. I was just like, you know what? That looks like that's an interesting thumbnail for a band I've
Yeah.
never heard. I have no idea what to expect. And coming into this with no expectations was the best thing I think that could have happened.
Yeah.
And it's just, God, it's so good. If you guys have not listened to this album, go listen to it. You will not regret it. And if you do regret it, then you're not allowed in this podcast anymore. You're not allowed to have differing opinions. Not here. Not today, son. It's just such a good album. But yeah, I think that concludes this bonus episode of the Feedback Loop. Thank you all for listening. If you're listening, if you're not listening, but then hear this at some point, then I guess you are listening. So thank
Yeah.
you as well for listening.
Give us your top fives.
Give us all of your top fives. Give us all your honorable mentions. Give us albums. I'm probably going to go through all of Joey's list, just of his honorable mentions and stuff that I haven't heard, just because he spoke so highly of them, and I think that means a lot to me. So thank you, Joey, for giving me some more albums to add to my backlog. But also thank you for doing this podcast, man. We've been doing this for fucking ever now.
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
think was it this episode or last episode that we talked about? It's almost been like, I guess,
I think it was last episode. It's been almost 4 years.
Yeah. Like, I guess we're completing the 3rd year, starting the 4th, or maybe we're going into. It's been longer than it actually feels like, and it's a part of life, and it's a nice time. Like it's a good thing to do, and I feel like it's a very good way.
We've gotten fewer than 5 comments in the past like 4 years we've been doing this.
But which,
hey, I don't really care. It's been fun.
Yeah,
it's been great, and I get that this is kind of taking a tone of like this is the last episode. It's not. It's the last episode of this year. We're recording this episode, and then I'm fucking off to Indiana for 2 weeks. So I guess for you all, there may or may not be another episode next week, depending on my flight schedule and how I feel like when I feel like coming back. We might take a little break just to have some like holiday time to kind of spend with family and friends and whatnot and decompress, and then we're gonna come back right back at you in January, which is when you're hearing this. So I don't know why I said it like you weren't in January already, but hopefully by the end of January, if not early February, we'll be back with some more hot takes on music. But the only cold take of the evening is Ants from Up There being the best album.
Yeah, because of course
2022, because it has to be. There's no other way. But yeah, like Joey said, drop your fives, your fave fives, your top fives. They don't even have to be like albums that came out this year. Just give us some good albums, your favorite albums this year. Just drop some shit in social media comments and DMs and stay in our feedback loop.
And also bye.